Hi everyone, this is Mixing Grays Part 2. This is going to be traditional versus digital, but there's no competition involved here. We're just going to make grays mixed with traditional colors and then scan them in to digital form and take them into Rebelle Pro 7 and see how well we could mix them. Now what I'm after is a very nice mix of color, just such as these right here. And here's a few more that these are just sample mixes I'm doing of cobalt violet. That cobalt violet is one of my favorite colors in traditional watercolor. It mixes well with everything, and it's a very nice color to use just as like even an accent color or anything in between, even in nature also. Now I'm going to be after mixing colors together like this. Now I could make swatches, just taking one color and then adding a little bit to it, make one swatch, add a little bit more to it, make another swatch, and so on. But I don't want just solid colors. I want what happens when they mix. If I get granulation, if I get different variations of colors mixing, if I do get my grays, I may get greens, I may get purples. It's going to depend on what colors we mix. Now, here is what I'm going to do them on. This, for example, is cerulean blue, and I will put the cerulean blue all on this side here, and then each color of what it's going to be mixing with here. And I got plenty of pages, and what I'm going to do is keep these of all the common colors I mix. Cerulean blue, cobalt blue, French ultramarine, dioxazine purple, and then I'll mix those with various reds and then also browns, and I want to keep this for myself. This way I will know what combinations of colors will give me, and when I look at a object or a different scenic landscape, anything, I could tell what colors I will need to mix to get what I want as an end result. Because remember, traditional, we don't have a color picker. We don't have anything that could help us out. It's just with our eyes, what we see, and the colors that we buy. Whatever colors you purchase, those are your options of mixing, and that's it. So for that reason, I want to make a nice permanent collection of all my common colors mixed together. Here is the current watercolor right here that I am also working on. This I will get into a little bit more versus the Arches Watercolor 140, which is this one right here. This is the current picture I was working on, and it's done now. This one is still uncompleted. What I want to do is finish this one, but the big difference here is this one I would consider detailed, more detailed. This one is fairly loose, but I would have a hard time doing a detailed one on Arches Cold Press 140. This has a lot of dimples, a lot of texture. It's pretty tough to create nice, fine, detailed lines, where the Cold Press illustration board, which is number 114, is very nice, and it's very smooth surface, but it still is made from 100% rag cotton paper. So now let's go ahead and start making our swatches, and we're going to get started. Then once we're done with those and they dry good, then we're going to scan them into digital form and move them into Rebelle 7 Pro. Let's get started. This is the finished palette. This is where I'm going to leave it now indefinitely. This is the burnt umber, raw umber, quinacridone gold, Aureolin yellow, Winsor lemon, Winsor orange, Winsor red, permanent rose, burnt sienna, brown madder, cobalt violet, alizarin crimson, Winsor violet or dioxazine purple, French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, Prussian blue, and Winsor green blue shade. Now, of all these, this one you can see it's kind of gooey yet. I just put out a whole bunch of that paint. It's just barely drying on top. Same thing with the dioxazine purple. They're pretty fresh. The other ones are pretty hard. I just cemented them into shape with the same color, and that's it. Now they're pretty well dried. I don't like to use straight colors out of the tube only because it's too easy to get too much paint on your brush, and then if you go to touch the paper, especially if it's a staining color, If it's a loose, spontaneous painting and an overabundance of intense color would not be as noticeable as trying to illustrate something as it should be. So if I want to make an abstract or even just a looser watercolor and really splash down the color, sometimes that is the intensity of the color that makes the painting, only because that's what watercolors are all about. Real intense color, in my opinion. Everything else, as far as illustrating something, then if a specific bird or a specific tree looks a specific way, then I only want to duplicate those colors in the sense of creating it as it is in nature or real life. Let's move on to the swatch book. Okay, just real quickly, just to show you a little bit more close-up detail. This is the cold press illustration board number 114. This is what I would do my more detailed watercolor paintings on. I have a ways to go with this. A lot of this has to be darkened up, which will indirectly lighten this up. But what I want to do is show you sideways. If I get light skimming across the surface of it, there is hardly any texture whatsoever up in here, that it's very smooth for cold press. Now if I do the same thing with that watercolor painting that it was the demo I just did, you could already just about see the texture up in here as far as what the cold press watercolor paper does for Arches 140. Now if I turn it sideways a little bit, you could even see the texture that much more because of the angle the light is casting shadows over the dimples themselves. Now the only thing I wanted to show you real quick about this one is on this particular demo, I'm going to get into that more in detail, but this right here is a cut in the paper. How I got it there, I have no idea. I try to protect my materials as much as possible, but what I'm going to do is retouch that out during this demo, which is very important because things like this would be so easy to retouch digitally that an actual painting trying to retouch something out such as that is a little bit more of a challenge, but that's also more of a photography skill. Back in the film days is what you had to do to the actual photograph, versus now everything is done in the computer before it's printed. Well, we'll do that during that demo. Let's get started with our swatches. Okay, let's take a look and see how we're going to do this. This is just a travel book from Arches, 140-pound cold press. I'd like to make all my sample color mixing on the same type of paper I'm going to be using. I even use cold press digitally with, there's no weights involved, but with a specific percentage. It's usually 100%. It's pretty reliable. But I will go over these. This is just, for example, a French ultramarine blue, and how I'm going to do these. I'm just going to do them speed painting because there's quite a few. I'll show you real quick how many we'll be working with. But I will put the French ultramarine blue down here, and then go up to burnt umber blue, up to raw umber blue, up to quinacridone gold, and so on. But there is quite a few pages. There's 4 on each one. There's another one, French ultramarine, with a different set of 4. Cobalt blue with the same ones. And then cobalt blue with these. Cerulean blue. Cerulean blue. Cerulean blue. Cobalt violet. And then these 4 are picked out that I think will work best with cobalt violet. And then that would be Prussian blue, and these 4 I'm going to work with. Now Prussian blue with burnt sienna, you get some really interesting deep greens, and they'll also be like a grayish green. So if you need shadows and you want a shadow in a green area, then it would be best to use a greenish gray darkened down, because I don't like to use just pure black. If I use black as a shadow, then it's going to tend to float above the actual painting itself. It won't look like it's a shadow over something. It may look like a separate layer that's laying on top of what you're painting the shadow on. So we have to be careful about that. Now again, as I always say, if that's the look you want, then by all means do what you need to do to get your end result. Now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to do these all in speed painting, and then we'll scan them into the computer and digitize them and go from there. But what I also may do is I'm going to save some of these for later on. We are going to also go over this, and that is I have about, I'd say right now currently 8 different colors of inks, and later on I'm going to be introducing line work and pen and ink work to the watercolors. But what I'll also do then is make a sample swatch colors of all the different inks, varying from brown to a grayish blue to just pretty much a pure black, which is the Takasumi, is bamboo carbon just built up into the ink, which is really interesting. But we'll also cover those over in future demos. Let's go ahead and get all of these combinations started, and we'll just do that speed painting and then go over them after they're done and dry. I chose this speed as an ideal speed to still be able to watch what I'm doing and how I mix the colors, but not too slow that you have to sit and watch the entire process in real time. Some of these colors are very intense and are very strong when they first go down. In this case, I may take some of the opposite color and add more back into it to make sure I get as an even mix as I can. If I have too much water in the color, I will then rinse out the brush, dry it off a little bit, and soak up a little bit of the water to try and leave some of the color behind. I don't want to create white spots or white shapes in the color mixing area. I may end up with some of those, but that's okay as long as I feel I have enough of color mixing that I could see what the two colors will give me when mixed. Some of these color combinations I really enjoy using. They are some of my favorites. The cobalt violet is one of my favorite colors to use, and it mixes well with everything, but it is a very subtle color, and it can be easily overpowered by any other color. Working with these same colors digitally gives me the opportunity to see things the way I've always done. Okay, let's take a look and see what we have. These are going to be our dried swatches. And remember, these combinations, there's a total of 36 color combinations here. And I picked out the ones that I thought I would like the best or just like to work with the best. But also, they may be some of the combinations I'd rather stay away from. But with 18 or so colors involved in my palette, there is plenty more combinations of colors you could have, but these would be probably considered the most common. So let's start off with this one. Just real quickly, I'm going to go through these. The French Ultramarine, again, I put French Ultramarine at the bottom. And then the Burnt Umber, you can see it is kind of like a silvery gray. It's a nice neutral gray. Then this one, it's going to start going greenish as we go towards more yellow. And then this, again, is the Ultramarine on the bottom, and the Raw Umber, Quinacridone Gold, and then the Aureolin. Now, one thing you'll see right away with some of these traditional colors is as I'm mixing them, some of them, like the Alizarin Crimson and the Permanent Rose, are very strong. I only rubbed the color just a couple of times, and that was it, and it still wasn't quite a bit. Now, these marks right here are from pushing the water around with the hairdryer. Even though this was the very first one, I must have had quite a bit of water on this one, because by the time I was done, then I went back in and dried to make sure they were dry, and I started pushing water around, and that's why I got a little bit of a cauliflower effect there. But I think that most of these came out to the point where I could see the variations of mixed colors I would get. The Alizarin Crimson, Brown Madder, and then the Burnt Sienna is starting to go green a little bit here, which is kind of an interesting green, kind of like a grayish green. And then the Permanent Rose, a little bit more of a vibrant purple. The Cobalt Blue, Burnt Umber, a very subtle gray. Cobalt Blue is a very nice color to work with too. the raw umbers. And then again, I'm going to start going towards greens as I go towards more yellows. And then the quinacridone gold is a very nice color. It mixes well with quite a few colors. And then the Aureolin, the cobalt blue, makes a really nice green, just a snappy green. Now the next cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, you get a real nice purple. It's a little bit more of a grayish purple, but the brown matter, that's already going more towards gray. Same with the burnt sienna. It's like a muted gray. And then the permanent rose, I'm going to get a pretty snappy purple with it. Cerulean blue with the burnt umber, I'm getting a muted gray. Raw umber, I'm going to start going greens again. But this is an interesting color right here. And then a quinacridone gold, again, gives me a nice value of just a transparent color. It's an interesting color that's more of like, again, a muted gray. And then the Aureolin is going to give me a pretty snappy green. The cerulean blue with alizarin crimson is a very interesting grayish purple. It's a little wee bit gray down. And then again, the brown matter, it's going more gray. And then the burnt sienna, I would find that an interesting color. And then this is what happens when you splash permanent rose over on your burnt sienna and cerulean blue. And then the final one, permanent rose, that's a very interesting purple also. Some of these colors and combinations, I have a wisteria, very nice vibrant purple flowers that I have a watercolor painting in the works. And some of these combinations I'll definitely be using for the bright, vivid wisteria in the sunlight, and then the shadowed areas of what I would think that would make a really nice subdued purple, a little on the grayish side. Cerulean blue with the Winsor red. It's the cerulean blue toned it down quite a bit, but the Winsor red, same thing with the other permanent rose and alizarin crimson. Very strong. Didn't need very much of it all, but that's an interesting grade down color also. And then the Winsor orange, I wasn't sure how this one would hold up with just a nice even mix from one to the other. But it's not too bad either. It's kind of a grayish, a little on the grayish side. And then the Winsor lemon, I'm getting a nice grayed down green. I would call that a grayed down green. It's not a snappy green. But then the cobalt violet and the cerulean blue came out pretty nice too. It's kind of a little wee bit grayish. And again, when you see these colors, there will be on a calibrated monitor for me, so I'll be able to see a pretty good idea of what's going on, but what they may appear like, the subtleties may not come across to the best. Cobalt violet and Winsor violet, that's a very nice even mix. Those two colors seem very close together as far as when I mix them. It's just going almost from dark to light of the same value of purple. French ultramarine blue, same thing. I'm getting a nice, interesting mix there. Cobalt blue and cobalt violet, those two mix well. And then the permanent rose, I'm getting a nice mixture there too of different color combinations of any of these. Could be considered different, whether you want to stay on the cool side, on the warm side, different grays, or even just different blues. Now the Prussian blue, that one is pretty strong also. With the alizarin crimson, you can see what kind of a grayish I'm getting there, almost a purplish gray. Then it's going to be even a little wee bit stronger purple here. This is more grayed down from what I could see. And then what this is a little bit more purplish, but it's still on the gray side. Then a burnt sienna and a Prussian blue is a really nice deep green. It's a deep grayish green. And then the Winsor yellow and Prussian blue is a real nice snappy green. Not bad at all. And that's it. Now what I'm going to do is scan these in, and that will be part 3. This way I'll keep part 2 just traditional, and part 3 will be all digital, and then we'll be done with this series of demos. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And remember, stay tuned for part 3. If you want traditional and digital, you could just watch both of them, but most folks may be interested in one or the other. And as I always say, until I see you out in the field or back at the studio, thanks for watching.